Hello, and welcome back to Polyglot Nook, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate the beautiful and sometimes challenging world of language learning. I'm so happy to have you with me today. As a language learner myself, I've had many conversations with people who feel like they've hit a wall. They can speak with some confidence, they can get their ideas across, and they feel like they're doing a pretty good job. But they just can't seem to get to that next level of fluency. They'll tell me, I can talk about my day, but I can't discuss a complex historical event. Or, I can understand a simple movie, but the news is just too fast and full of words I don't know. This feeling is incredibly common, and it's a sign that you've reached what I like to call the conversational plateau. My friend Maria is a great example of this. She had been studying Italian for about 2 years and had reached a comfortable B1 level. She could travel to Italy and get by just fine. She could make new friends, order food, and have long conversations about her life and theirs. But when she tried to read a novel, or when her Italian friends started talking about politics, she would get lost. She felt like she was a passenger in the conversation, unable to truly participate. It was frustrating for her, and she started to feel like she would never truly become fluent. The problem wasn't her effort. Maria was working incredibly hard. The problem was that she was focusing on the wrong things. To get to that next level, she was so focused on speaking that she was neglecting a crucial aspect of language learning: reading. Today, I want to talk about why reading is the single most powerful tool you have to break through that conversational plateau and reach true fluency. This isn't just about reading a few articles here and there. It's about making reading a core, non-negotiable part of your daily language habit. It's about understanding that the journey to fluency isn't just about speaking. It's about building a massive, robust vocabulary. And there is no more efficient way to do that than by reading. Let's dive in with some numbers, because numbers can tell us a very clear story. We need to understand the huge vocabulary gap between what is needed for a simple conversation and what is needed for a true, deep understanding of a language. When we talk about a person's vocabulary, we're not just talking about counting every single word. As we've discussed before, researchers use the concept of word families. For example, the words happy, unhappy, happily, and happiness are all part of one word family. This is how they get a more accurate picture of a person's overall vocabulary knowledge. The average adult native speaker of a language like English has a vocabulary of about 20,000 to 30,000 word families. This isn't a number they get from sitting in a classroom. It's a number they build over a lifetime of reading books, listening to complex conversations, watching movies, and just being alive in their language. A person who has a formal education, who reads widely, or who is a specialist in a certain field, could have a vocabulary of 40,000 word families or more. It's an enormous number. Now, let's compare that to the vocabulary a non-native speaker needs to survive and thrive. As we know from research by linguists like Paul Nation, you can get by with as few as 1,000 word families. With 1,000 words, you can handle simple tourist situations. Hello, goodbye, where is the train station? And so on. It's a great starting point, but it's very limited. To become a fluent conversationalist, like my friend Maria, You need to know about 5,000 to 6,000 word families. This is the sweet spot for everyday communication. At this level, you can have comfortable, spontaneous conversations on a wide range of common topics. You can talk about your hobbies, your job, your family, and your hopes for the future. You feel confident because you can express yourself without a lot of hesitation. This is the conversational plateau. And for many, it feels like the end of the road. They think, I'm fluent. What more could I need? But what happens when you want to read a novel or watch a complex documentary? Suddenly, your 6,000 word vocabulary isn't enough to read an average novel without stopping every few seconds to look up a word. You need a vocabulary of at least 9,000 word families to read more formal, specialized texts like news articles, academic papers, or classic literature. That number can easily go up to 10, 12, or even 15,000 word families. The vast majority of vocabulary in any language is not used in everyday conversation. It's used in books, magazines, and formal media. This means that if you're only focusing on speaking, you are completely cutting yourself off from the wellspring of vocabulary that native speakers draw from. This is why Maria could talk about her day, but couldn't follow a conversation about politics. She hadn't built up the thousands of additional words needed to understand those more complex topics. So, the first step to breaking through the plateau is to acknowledge this vocabulary gap. The second step is to understand how to use reading to fill it. And we do that by using two distinct, but equally important, methods of reading: intensive reading and extensive reading. The two pillars of a reading habit. First, let's talk about intensive reading. Think of this as the heavy lifting of your language workout. The goal of intensive reading is not to read a lot, but to read a little. Very, very deeply. This is a deliberate, focused process where you take a short text, maybe a single page, or even a few paragraphs, and you analyze every single detail. Intensive reading is where you build the foundation of your language. It's where you master grammar, understand complex sentence structures, and learn words in a very precise way. To do this, you need to choose a text that is slightly above your current level. It should be challenging, but not impossible. Here's a practical guide for intensive reading. Step 1. Choose your text. A short news article, a blog post on a topic you're interested in, or a chapter from a book is perfect. Step 2. Read it once to get the general idea. Don't worry about the words you don't know. Just try to grasp the main theme. Step 3. Now, read it a second time, but very slowly. Use a good dictionary, preferably a monolingual dictionary, if you're at AB2 level or higher. This means an English-to-English dictionary. For example, it forces you to think in the language and build stronger connections. Look up every word you don't know. Write them down. Step 4. Analyze the grammar. Identify the verb tenses, the prepositions, the noun phrases. Try to understand why the author structured the sentences the way they did. Step 5. Read the text one more time, out loud. Try to imitate the rhythm and intonation of a native speaker. If you have an audio version, reading out loud is crucial. because it trains your mouth and brain to produce the sounds of the language correctly. Step 6. Reread the text several times over the next few days. The goal is to make this text a part of you, so that the grammar and vocabulary within it become second nature. This process is hard. It can be frustrating, but it is essential. Intensive reading builds the strong, deep roots of your language knowledge. It's the reason why a well-taught student, even with a smaller vocabulary, can often express themselves with more grammatical precision than someone who has just picked up the language by ear. Now, let's move on to extensive reading. This is the fun part. If intensive reading is a workout, extensive reading is the equivalent of playing a sport for fun. The goal here is not to study, but to simply enjoy the story. For extensive reading, you need to follow what I call the golden rule of 98% comprehension. This means you should understand 98% of the words in the text. I know that sounds like a lot, but this is the secret to learning without frustration. Let's break that down. A typical book page has about 300 words. 98% comprehension means you would only encounter about 6 new words on that entire page. With only 6 new words, you can easily guess their meaning from the context. You don't have to stop. You don't have to break your reading flow. You just keep going, and the words subtly sink into your subconscious over hundreds of pages. This adds up to a huge amount of new vocabulary, acquired naturally and effortlessly. If you try to read a text that is only 80% comprehensible, you're going to encounter 60 new words on every single page. This will quickly become a nightmare. You'll be stopping constantly to look up words, and you'll completely lose the thread of the story. You won't enjoy it, and you'll eventually give up. That's why choosing the right material is so important for extensive reading. The power of the right material. So, where can you find this magical 98% comprehensible material? One of the best places to start is with graded readers. These are books written specifically for language learners, with their vocabulary and grammar carefully controlled for different proficiency levels. You can start with a level that feels easy for you and gradually work your way up. Another excellent option is young adult literature or children's books. Don't think of this as childish. A lot of young adult novels have compelling stories and rich themes, but they use language that is much more accessible than classic literature. The same goes for high-quality children's books. Reading them will give you not only new vocabulary, but also a great insight into the culture of the language. If you have a hobby, look for blogs, magazines, or websites about it in your target language. For example, if you love to cook, read cooking blogs. If you're into video games, read gaming news sites. Your existing knowledge of the topic will help you understand the text, even if you encounter new words. This is a fantastic way to make reading a pleasure, not a chore. Advanced techniques for a modern learner. Now that we've covered the basics, let's talk about some advanced techniques that will supercharge your reading habit. The first is the combined power of reading and listening. I can't stress this enough. Read along with audiobooks. This is a game changer. When you read and listen at the same time, You're training two different parts of your brain. You're connecting the written word with the spoken sound, which is essential for languages with tricky pronunciation, like English and French. To get the most out of this, you can try different methods. You can listen to the audiobook once, without the text, to challenge your listening skills. Then, you can listen a second time, while reading along. You can even read a sentence first, and then listen to it, to hear the correct pronunciation and intonation. This technique solidifies your vocabulary, improves your listening comprehension, and corrects your pronunciation, all at the same time. Another technique is to use bilingual texts, where you have the original language on one page and a translation on the other. A lot of people have heard of the Ilya Frank method, which is a version of this. The key is to use the translation as a support, not as a crutch. You should try to read the original text first, and only glance at the translation when you absolutely can't understand something. This allows you to stay immersed in the language, while still having a safety net. For more advanced learners, try this. Instead of a dictionary, use a professional literary translation to help you. For example, if you're reading a classic Russian novel and you get stuck, look at a high-quality English translation of that exact passage. The translator's choices will give you a clear understanding of the context and meaning, without you having to stop and look up individual words. Your existing vocabulary will help you to bridge the gap and understand the translator's decisions. Building the habit. The final word. The final piece of advice I can give you is to make reading a habit, not an event. Don't wait until you have a full hour to sit down and read. Start with just 10 or 15 minutes a day. Read on the bus, during your lunch break, or right before you go to sleep. The consistency is far more important than the duration. And be patient with yourself. Reading in a new language is a skill that takes time to develop. At first, it will feel slow. It will feel difficult. But as you continue, you will notice that you're reading faster, that you're looking up fewer words, and that the language is starting to flow naturally in your mind. Reading is a journey of discovery. It's not just about learning words, it's about connecting with new ideas, new cultures, and new perspectives. It's about building a bridge from the language you speak to the vast world that exists in the written word. My friend Maria took this advice to heart. She started with young adult novels and made a habit of reading for 20 minutes every night before bed. She also started listening to podcasts in Italian while reading the transcripts. Slowly, she felt her vocabulary growing. She began to notice words she had only seen in books, appearing in everyday conversation. She finally broke through her conversational plateau and is now able to read Italian novels and discuss complex topics with confidence. She didn't just learn a language, she found a new world. So, from this day forward, I want you to change your goal. Your goal is not just to speak fluently. Your goal is to become a confident, successful reader of your new language. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. It's truly an honor to share these ideas with you. I hope this podcast has given you a new perspective and the confidence to continue on your path. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and share it with a friend. who might need to hear this message. And be sure to ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next episode. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep speaking. This is Polyglot Nook.